Welcome to the Success Partner Podcast. I'm Daya Naef, your host and founder of The Success Partner. On this show, we dive into the stories of attorneys, business professionals, and entrepreneurs who have navigated the ups and downs of building successful careers and businesses. From the strategies they've implemented to the challenges they've overcome, we're here to uncover the insights that can help you on your own journey to success. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. Welcome back, everybody, to the Success Partner Podcast. I am your host, Daya Naef, and I'm so excited to have today Susan Bryant. Susan Bryant is a CPA, a tax strategist, and most importantly, a positive thinker. So, Susan, I'm glad you're here. Would you go ahead and tell us about yourself and your work?
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me on this show, Daya. Yeah, so I like to say that here at Unboxed Advisors, and pretty much my whole life mission is to make rich business owners wealthy. And we do that in a number of ways. Really got to focus on accounting, reduction of tax liabilities, which is everyone's favorite topic when it comes to business ownership, how to reduce those taxes. No one wants to pay any more to the government than they possibly can. And then just really looking holistically at their entire financial picture, make sure they're making all the right decisions when it comes to their finances overall.
Yeah. What are some of the craziest decisions people have made and you had to go back and fix it?
Oh, gosh. Well, I think the biggest mistake that business owners make is bad accounting records. You'd be surprised. Accounting is generally an afterthought for new business owners, especially, but even for the more experienced business owners, for whatever reason, investing in that function it just feels like it's, I don't know, like a very big cost. But I view accounting as an opportunity center, not as a cost center. And that's really what most business owners should be thinking about when they're talking about their accounting function. Get that accounting working like the discipline it's supposed to. You know exactly where your money is going, you know how revenue is being earned, how expenses are being incurred, like all that stuff has to be functioning very rapidly.
Yeah, it's like I hear people say, let's see how we did. At the end of the year, they're like, let's see how we did. And I was like, no.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen everything from, records not being updated for years. As a matter of fact, this was like a couple years ago. There's a very successful business owner. I mean, that company was probably worth somewhere in the neighborhood of $50 million. It was a lot of money. His accounting records, however, only got updated once a year. And that had to change. So we worked very hard to make sure that we were starting to implement that discipline. And fortunately, he recognized that and began to invest in, staff accountant, senior accountant, controller, CFO, building that function out. Because when you walk in and you're trying to do any type of planning for someone like that, whether it's a financial plan, like how are we going to eventually liquidate, go to a transaction, or even tax planning, forget it. If you don't have accounting records, you're dead in the water. It's just, you can't do it. You're stuck.
Wow. I'm surprised they made it that far on, gut instinct and be getting some sort of advice from somewhere. Just think about how great they would have been had they had some holistic financial
exactly
going along.
Just imagine. Yeah, they would have been so much more successful. But the bank account is usually that area where business owners they like to look at that bank account. If they've got a certain amount of cash, then they feel okay about it. But that is it is just heart-wrenching when I see that mistake being made. And it's all over the board. It doesn't matter how big or small the company is. I see that as a really big mistake.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know from your bio that you've gotten a lot of awards and recognition in your industry. So good for you. How is that?
Well, public accounting has not necessarily been the most innovative industry up until probably I'd say the last several years is when people started asking themselves, like, is there a better way to function in this industry? And COVID, with the loss of many accountants, sort of spurred this on even further, because when you're losing such a significant amount of your workforce in a profession, and now there are even more demands in terms of the complexity of tax code, accounting function, more businesses being formed, COVID was absolutely crazy during that time with PPP loans and all the other madness that was happening. It was really time to change. And we're starting to see private equity now come into this industry. A lot of things are changing in public accounting. And so I've been very fortunate to be maybe one of the more forward thinking accountants in how I serve my customers, but also how I have run businesses and firms in the past. Yes, I own it along with my business partner, Catherine Meyer.
How is that? How is it like? How is it having a partnership?
Yeah, it's been great. It's been fabulous, as a matter of fact. And, we're doing things a little differently. One of the biggest challenges for business owners is getting their accountant on the phone because the accountant is so busy and swamped with all this transactional level work. So we've sort of flipped the script on all of that and said, hey, you know what? Getting that transaction level work done is important, but there's this whole group of people who need way more. They need a more concierge approach to things. They need someone to be able to call when a question pops up, and that happens quite rapidly. They need immediate responses. They need more hand holding, if you will, more guidance, more direction, someone that interacts with all of their other advisors. And that really kind of brings that holistic approach all the way around, because we're not just talking to each other about what's happening in the accounting records. We're talking to their financial advisor, their estate planning attorney, their insurance broker. All these other people become part of that process. That's the way I think it was meant to be. It's just accounting firms have become very siloed, and they're really only ever talking to each other and never really going outside of that to speak to the other advisors that are involved with these business owners. So it's been really fantastic. But when we kind of started this, we thought, I'm not really sure who's going to buy this because it's so different, but it's been so well received. And we're finding more and more that this is really what business owners need and want. So I'm very hopeful that there's going to be more accounting firms that sort of take this approach to serving this special group of customers that just really need a lot more attention.
Yeah, that makes sense. And being able to work like with a collaborative team, because your people, businesses, they need their attorney's advice, they need their wealth planner's advice, the tax advice, planning. It's not being in a vacuum, and you don't want to go to one that's not aligned with the way the other one's strategy, and then you'll be at a deadline and you'll be like, well, which way do I go? So it's definitely.
Yeah, it happens all the time. So this is kind of the setup that I usually see. So client is in the middle. Financial advisor reaches out and says, hey, I've got an idea, or I'm thinking about this, and this may be an implication of it. Can you go talk to your CPA? So client takes that information and goes contact the CPA, and the CPA says, oh, I have some questions about that. Client's like, okay, well, then let me go back and talk to the advisor, financial advisor. And then, it's just back and forth, and it's the hub and spoke method, and it is so ineffective. They're just not getting their advisors connected and having those discussions. And so what I'd like to see happen is that the client sends information to the leader, whoever that appointed leader is from a financial perspective. And that leader then takes it to all the other appropriate parties, fleshes out the idea, thinks about all the implications, and brings it back to the client with everything kind of bulleted out. Like, here's what the attorney said, here's what the wealth advisor said, here's the implication from an estate planning standpoint. And here's the recommendation of what we think you should do in that particular situation. This or that, option A, B, C. And then make that recommendation when it's all fleshed out so that the client, these busy business owners, they don't have to worry about it. So, but that leadership really from a financial perspective is what is important. Someone has to be appointed to be that person to take the ball and run with it. Well, that's what we like to serve in. That's the capacity we want to serve in for our clients so that we can kind of take the burden off of them. Many times it is the client. The client is being the one who's been serving in that capacity. So there's a little bit of training that's necessary to get them like, just give it over to us and we'll take it and we'll make sure that that happens. It needs to be someone. They need to appoint someone in that role, compensate them appropriately, set forth the like, what are your responsibilities? What are my expectations? And give someone that job if I need you to be that person. In larger companies, it's usually like a CFO, but then that doesn't bridge into the personal financial standpoint. So really it's generally someone who's sitting sort of outside of the function of the company, maybe a little bit of a purview into what's happening in the business, but not necessarily like the controller or someone who's just got a strict accounting focus.
Yeah, I find that people come in at like myself that are completely third parties. Like we have just a complete different view of what's going on and are able to have get more confidential information from different parties and keep it so that we can get more of a map of what's going on, where the inside
Mhm.
people are pretty much this lane, that lane, this lane.
Yep. That's right. Yeah. And you've got to get somebody who can think that way. So, yes, there have been plenty of consultants who have kind of referred us in because they're seeing the same thing. Maybe it shows up as an operational symptom and they start asking about the finances and they see that disjointed behavior and they're like, we think you need a different solution here. So, hey, it's time to solve that problem once and for all. But you're right. The outside perspective makes all the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's your favorite client? If I was the person that was listening to this today and you wanted to meet me, who am I?
Yeah, so very busy business owner. Usually it's a business owner who has a one primary operational business that's spewing off a lot of cash. That successful business requires a lot of their attention. However, they're very interested as a business owner in delving into other ancillary businesses and perhaps even like real estate, commercial real estate, residential real estate, and really building this bigger portfolio. But that comes with these other challenges of accounting and tax implications and how to handle it. And so that's one of my favorite clients to deal with because they've been very successful in their business. They totally get how to make business work for them. But then things start to kind of get sidetracked. If they take their eye off the ball and maybe that residential real estate or commercial real estate or their tax stuff, then things start to break a little bit. So I can really come in and kind of be that umbrella, if you will, and keep everything on track, stay in touch with the other accountants or the other ancillary business owners, the operators of those businesses to understand what's happening in those businesses and how is that going to impact them down the road. Because if they're running a primary business, something that's got, 5, 10, $15 million worth of revenue, they're consumed by keeping that thing going. And they want to, and they need to, because it is the source of
Yeah.
all of the financial success that feeds all these other components of the life that they're trying to build. But you just don't want something to go sideways on some of those other businesses that are sort of outside that primary business.
Yeah, makes sense. So multi-passionate entrepreneurs, but with a core business that's making money. Yeah. Okay, cool. And when this airs, it'll be early 2025. We will have a new administration.
Mm.
Any hot tax tips that you see coming up and related to that?
Man, we'll keep your ears peeled. So it's an interesting time from a tax perspective. So the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that was enacted in 2018 under the previous Trump administration is set to sunset. Many provisions set to sunset at the end of 2025. So if Congress does nothing, a bunch of things change and go back to the way things were in 2017. But with the new administration and certainly a lot of those campaign promises that were made along the way, we're very interested to see what may happen. And there's a lot of opportunity for sure to keep things very exciting for business owner. President-elect Donald Trump has talked about wanting to really expand business. Growth has sort of been that key word along the way. And we know that growth from an economic standpoint really happens with our small business owners. I mean, they're the backbone of the US economy. So the more opportunity we give for our small business owners to save taxes, then we know that that's going to create the engine for that growth. So I'm optimistic that we're going to see some very rapid change. I'm hoping that it is in the first quarter of 2025, especially because we have so much uncertainty looming at
Mhm.
the end of 2025. So the sooner we can get that that legislation done, the better off we are going to be. And everyone's not sitting in this state of like, I don't know what's going to happen. What should I do with my business? What kind of decision should I be making? I think one of the other things that's going to happen is that we have a lot of boomers who are running very successful businesses. They weathered the storm in COVID 2020. They've recovered. And now they're staring at probably some uncertainty past 2028 when it comes to the tax code, especially that lovely capital gains tax. And so I think there's also going to be a lot of attention given to how can the boomers start to exit from these big businesses and really capitalize upon what they built, the value they've created prior to there being any further tax changes and uncertainty post the next election. So I think it's going to be an exciting time
Yeah,
to be a business
really.
owner in the next several years.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as a small business owner, that uncertainty, you feel it every time we go through an election change, and then we had COVID, and then so definitely good to get things moving again. Yeah, I also heard that something about it's a wild statistic, like 52% of businesses will change hands in the next 5 years, and a lot of that was that sort of boomer retirement from their own business.
Yeah, it makes me want to start an M&A business. Like I was talking to a guy not too long ago. Yeah, like maybe I should get in on the sell side M&A work. No, I agree. I agree. I think there's a name for it, and I can't remember, like silver surge or something like that they're talking about. Where I mean, the boomers almost have to get out. Really, I mean, number one because the tax code is uncertain, but number two because I mean they're going to age out, and they will actually want to go live their lives. I mean, running a business is hard work. So you want to go and you want to enjoy the rest, of your life. And so max value is kind of the way to do it. I mean, we'll see how much sort of PE dry powder is still out there. I think there's a lot of things
Sure.
that are going to be in flux, but I'm optimistic that this administration is going to afford the boomers sort of a pathway to that, and then hopefully create opportunities for investors along the way and the next future generation of business owners.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you for all those insights. And I really appreciate you coming on the podcast today and letting us get to know you a little bit. So, how do people find you when they're looking for you?
So the best way to connect with me is on LinkedIn. So look me up from there, or you can find me on our website, unboxedadvisors.com.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode of the Success Partner podcast. Our guest today was Susan Bryant with Unboxed Advisors, and we were so happy to have her here giving us some tips and things to do as business owners. Stay tuned for more episodes to come.